The message arrived just as I was rearranging the jewelry display in the store. Mia, I think we need a change. I've met someone new. She understands me in a way you never could. I'm moving to California with her tomorrow. I've also withdrawn all the money from our joint account. Hope you'll be okay. Good luck. I stared at the screen, unblinking. My hand still held the crystal necklace I had been about to place back on the rack. Outside the glass window, the crowd bustled past, the warm hues of the setting sun reflecting off the brick-paved sidewalk. A soft chuckle came from behind me. Mrs. Richmond, a regular customer, was trying on a wine-colored silk scarf in front of the mirror. Does this suit me, Mia? I nodded, offering a calm smile, as if my entire life hadn't just been shattered by a single text. You look wonderful. That color really flatters your complexion. I wrapped the scarf in the boutique's signature elegant silver wrapping, accepted her cash, and walked her to the door. Only when the door chime signaled her departure did I allow myself to take a slow, steady breath. Michael had just left me, over a text message. But I wasn't surprised. The signs had been there all along. Clear as cracks in an old mirror. The unusual overtime shifts. The calls he never answered in front of me. The sudden obsession with his appearance. Hitting the gym 5 times a week. Switching colognes. Buying younger, trendier clothes despite being 44 years old. 3 months ago, I had found an expensive restaurant receipt for the very night he had claimed to be working late. I hadn't cried. I hadn't confronted him. I had simply opened a new bank account. A week later, when he suggested merging all our accounts to simplify things, I had smiled and agreed, while quietly transferring all my savings to a secure place. The joint account he had just cleaned out? It had exactly $3,200 left in it, just enough to keep him from getting suspicious these past few months. As for my real savings, I had protected those long ago. My phone buzzed again, another message from Michael. Don't text me begging to take you back. I know you're hurt, but this is for the best. I'll send someone to pick up my stuff later. And don't worry, you still have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The boutique I had built from nothing, which now made far more money than his mid-level management job ever had. The business he had always dismissed as a hobby, whenever I stayed late working. I looked down at my phone and smiled, not because I found any of this amusing, but because I knew, by tomorrow, Michael would be learning a lesson he never saw coming. I set my phone down on the glass counter, my fingertips brushing over its cool surface. I wasn't panicking, I was simply thinking. Going over everything in my mind, to make sure I hadn't overlooked a single detail. I hadn't. Everything had been prepared in advance. 3 months ago, when I found that high-end restaurant receipt on the night Michael had claimed to be working late, I hadn't caused a scene. I had simply tucked it into a small file. A file that now contained dozens of other receipts and suspicious transactions. After that, I had opened a new bank account at a completely separate bank. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly transferred small amounts of money, careful not to draw attention but ensuring my finances were secure. By the 3rd week, my private account held over $95,000. The entirety of my real savings from the past decade. The joint account Michael had just drained? It had only $3,200 left. Just enough to keep him convinced I was still the trusting, dependent wife he thought I was. I walked into the small office at the back of the boutique, unlocked the safe, and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were copies of all the important documents, proof of ownership for the house I lived in. The home I had inherited from my grandmother. Michael had suggested multiple times that I should add his name to the deed for convenience. But I had always refused, saying I wanted to keep it as a family memory. A perfect excuse to hide my real intentions. That house was mine, 100%. And I had never let Michael have any legal claim to it. I checked another folder. Business registration papers for the boutique I had built from the ground up. From the start, I had structured it as an LLC, with myself as the sole owner. Michael had zero legal rights to it, no matter what lies he might try to spin. Everything had been planned. I picked up my phone and dialed Cynthia, the divorce attorney I had consulted 2 months ago. The first time I met her, I had simply said I wanted to understand my legal rights in marriage. She hadn't asked many questions, but her eyes had told me she understood exactly what I was preparing for. Now when I called, she answered on the second ring. "Cynthia, it's time," I said simply. No explanations, no hesitation. "Has he left yet?" "He's leaving tomorrow, but he already drained the joint account and I have proof in the messages." "Good. I'll file the paperwork first thing in the morning. We'll request a freeze on all remaining joint assets. Are you ready?" I glanced at the stack of documents on my desk, at the carefully gathered evidence. Then back at Michael's last message on my phone screen. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anger. I felt one thing: certainty. I've been ready for a long time. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual, not out of worry, not out of heartbreak, but because today was the day I took my first real step forward. Michael was probably feeling victorious. I could picture him and his new girlfriend Sophie, if I remembered correctly, excitedly packing for their fresh start. A new beginning, a new life. A perfect win. Only, he was about to learn that not everything was going according to his plan. I got out of bed, poured myself a cup of coffee, and opened my laptop. A few clicks later, I logged into my bank account and checked the balance. The joint account was indeed empty, just as Michael had boasted. I wasn't surprised, I just smiled. Then, I picked up the phone and called the credit card company. "Hello, I'd like to report some fraudulent charges on my joint credit card with my ex-husband." The customer service representative's voice on the other end of the line was polite yet professional. "Please provide the details, ma'am." I glanced at Michael's message and listed them out one by one. 2 first-class plane tickets to Los Angeles. Booked yesterday. A 4-star hotel reservation in the city center, also booked yesterday. An expensive dinner at a well-known restaurant, scheduled for tonight. I have a message from my ex-husband admitting that he used the joint account without my consent. I can send a screenshot right now. There was a brief silence before the representative responded. "We'll review this immediately. If everything checks out, we will cancel these transactions and deactivate the card. Additionally, we will remove his access to this account." I sent the screenshots and waited. Within minutes, the representative confirmed. "The transactions have been reversed. Their plane tickets are now invalid, and the hotel reservation has been cancelled. Thank you for reporting this promptly." Perfect. I set my phone down and checked the time. If my guess was right, Michael and Sophie were probably on their way to the airport right now. And soon enough, they would realize that their so-called honeymoon getaway no longer existed. Right on cue, a message from Michael popped up. "Mia, what the hell did you do? The plane tickets aren't working, the hotel says the reservation was cancelled. You think you can pull this childish stunt?" I didn't respond. I simply sat back, sipping my coffee, savoring the moment. Less than 5 minutes later, another message appeared. "Whatever, I don't need an expensive hotel. You know what? I'm still going to have a way better life than you, stuck in that tiny shop with your boring little life." I laughed. He actually believed he was still in control, that he could still get under my skin with his arrogance. But no, Michael, you've lost everything, you just don't realize it yet. Around noon, while I was checking inventory in the back room of the store, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I recognized immediately. Mrs. Carroll, Michael's mother. I wasn't surprised. I had predicted she would call. I answered and brought the phone to my ear. "Mia, what is going on? Michael told me you deliberately sabotaged his plans, that you're taking revenge in such a cruel way." Her voice carried a mix of panic and anger. I could picture her sitting in her leather armchair in her living room, gripping her phone tightly, trying to make sense of everything. I took a deep breath, keeping my tone steady. "Mrs. Carroll, do you want to hear the truth or do you just want to defend Michael?" "The truth? He told me you drained the joint account, and now he has nothing." I chuckled softly, even though she couldn't see me. "That's interesting. Because according to the message I received from Michael himself, he bragged about withdrawing all the money from the joint account before leaving." I have screenshots if you'd like to see them. Silence. I continued. He also used our joint credit card to book flights and a hotel without my consent. That is financial fraud, and I simply reported it to the bank. I have his messages admitting to this. Would you like me to send them to you? A long pause stretched between us before Mrs. Carroll finally spoke again, her voice no longer filled with anger, but laced with hesitation. He didn't mention that part. I shrugged. Of course he didn't, because the truth doesn't work in his favor. But Mia, did you really have to do this? He's my son after all. I gripped my phone a little tighter, keeping my voice measured. Mrs. Carroll, I respect you, but Michael is not a victim. He betrayed me, stole money from our account, and thought he could humiliate me and walk away without any consequences. Do you really think I should have just let that happen? Another long silence. I need to talk to him. Good, you should do that. I hung up before she could say anything else. That evening I received a message from Sarah, Michael's younger sister. Mia, can I call you? I replied with a single word. Sure. Seconds later my phone rang. I picked up. Mia, I'm sorry. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. At first I believed Michael. He told me you had controlled him for years, that you always made things difficult for him, and never let him have his own life. But then I saw the messages you sent to Mom. I saw how he bragged about taking the money, and mocked you. She paused, her voice trembling. That's not the brother I thought I knew. I sighed, my voice softer than it had been with Mrs. Carroll. Sarah, I don't blame you, but this is who Michael really is. He never thinks about anyone but himself. I know. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in my family supports him. I smiled slightly. Thank you, Sarah, I really appreciate that. The call ended and I set my phone down. Outside the window, the sky was growing dark. But inside, a small flicker of relief began to glow. Michael's family and friends were starting to see him for who he truly was. And this was only the beginning. That morning, I walked into the courthouse with my back straight and my head held high. There was nothing to fear. Everything had been meticulously prepared. Across the courtroom, Michael sat with a scowl on his face. His suit looked like it hadn't been pressed in weeks, and his hair no longer had that polished shine. Sophie wasn't there. I guessed their grand love story hadn't lasted as long as Michael had imagined. My lawyer Cynthia flashed a confident smile as we took our seats. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The hearing began. Mrs. Harrison, you are claiming that the defendant, Mr. Michael Harrison, committed financial fraud during your marriage? Cynthia nodded and began presenting the case. We have clear evidence that Mr. Harrison withdrew all the funds from the joint account, without my client's consent, and used the joint credit card to book flights and hotel accommodations, for a trip with his girlfriend. We are submitting messages, in which the defendant admits to these actions. She placed a thick file on the judge's bench. I saw Michael tense as his lawyer flipped through the documents, likely realizing for the first time exactly what he had written in his arrogance. The judge frowned as he reviewed the evidence. Mr. Harrison, do you deny withdrawing funds from the joint account without prior notice to your wife? Michael swallowed hard. I just thought I had the right to take that money. Are you aware that doing so violates marital property laws while the divorce is still pending? He didn't answer. Next, Cynthia presented documentation regarding my assets. The house, the boutique, my private bank accounts. All legally in my name, either before the marriage or completely separate from marital property. Your Honor, Mr. Harrison has attempted to dispute my client's ownership of her business. However, under business law, this boutique is registered as an LLC, with Mrs. Harrison as the sole owner. We have records confirming that Mr. Harrison made no financial contributions to the business. The judge reviewed the documents before turning to Michael. Mr. Harrison, do you have any evidence proving you have a legal claim to this business? Michael opened his mouth as if to argue, but his lawyer placed a hand on his arm, silently warning him. After a few moments of silence, his lawyer finally spoke. Your Honor, the defendant has no evidence to support this claim. The judge nodded. Then, I will issue my ruling. Michael held his breath. I remained calm. The court orders that the full amount withdrawn from the joint account must be repaid within 30 days. If not, the plaintiff has the right to seek asset forfeiture to recover the funds. Furthermore, the house and boutique are legally owned by the plaintiff, and the defendant has no claim to either property. Michael blinked rapidly, his mouth opening as if to protest, but no words came out. The judge continued. Additionally, given the evidence of financial fraud and the defendant's intentional actions to cause harm to the plaintiff, I rule that Mr. Harrison is not entitled to any spousal support post-divorce. Michael shot up from his seat. This is insane. I have rights too. I supported her for years. That shop is what it is today because of me. The judge slammed the gavel down. Mr. Harrison, remain silent immediately or I will have you removed from this courtroom. Michael clenched his fists, his face turning red with rage, but he didn't dare say another word. I simply watched him, expressionless, as if observing a play where I already knew the ending. As the hearing concluded, I stepped out of the courtroom, feeling lighter than I had in years. Michael remained seated, motionless, staring down at the table, as if he had finally realized he had lost everything. Outside the courthouse, Cynthia patted my shoulder. Everything went exactly as planned. You did great, Mia. I took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air brush against my skin. My marriage was over. And I had won. 2 months after the divorce trial, I had nearly forgotten Michael's existence. Until news of his downfall started circulating among mutual acquaintances. He had lost everything. No savings, no home, and no Sophie. I heard from a friend that Sophie had left him shortly after he was forced to repay the money he had withdrawn from the joint account. She wasn't the kind of woman willing to struggle for love, and when she realized Michael had nothing left to support her, she vanished. Michael had to move back in with his mother, into his childhood bedroom. At first I couldn't believe it, but one day I overheard a conversation between 2 customers in my boutique. Have you heard about Michael Harrison? He's living with his mom now. Seriously? I thought he moved to California with that young woman. Well, turns out she wasn't too keen on paying the bills instead of being taken care of. Poor thing, huh? They both laughed, unaware that I was the person they were talking about. I said nothing, just smiled, adjusted a dress on the rack and carried on with my work. Michael could live however he wanted. I had moved on. My boutique was thriving more than ever. After the divorce, I poured all my energy into expanding my business. I hired more staff, invested in online marketing, and launched a fall fashion collection that was met with overwhelming enthusiasm. Within 3 months, my store's profits had increased by 40%. One late afternoon, as I was reviewing sales on my computer, Cynthia, my lawyer, sent me a message. Mia, just a heads up. Michael just filed a request to reduce his repayment amount. He claims he can't afford to pay on time. I shook my head. Predictable. I replied. Let the court handle it. I'm not worried. Not long after, Cynthia sent another message. The judge denied his request. If he doesn't pay on time, we'll file for asset seizure. Good. Michael wanted to escape the consequences of his actions, but this time, no one was enabling him anymore. A month later, I received a call from Mrs. Carroll, Michael's mother. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello, Mrs. Carroll. She sighed. Mia, I just wanted to talk to you for a moment. I stayed silent, waiting. You were right. Michael is not a victim. He always finds a way to blame others. But he never takes responsibility for what he does. She paused, her voice trembling slightly. I think I enabled him for too long. I thought I was supporting him, but in reality, I was just making him worse. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I looked out the window, the soft autumn sunlight filtering through the glass. I had never expected an apology from her. But hearing it, I felt a strange sense of relief. Thank you, Mrs. Carroll. I hope you continue to succeed with your boutique. You deserve it. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a moment, letting her words sink in. Michael had tried to destroy me, but instead, he had only made me stronger. And that was the real victory. 1 year after the divorce, I no longer thought about Michael. Not because I forced myself to forget him, but because I no longer needed to care. My life was now a series of busy yet fulfilling days. The boutique Michael once dismissed had grown into a chain of 5 locations across the city. Each store was bustling with customers, and revenue had tripled compared to before the divorce. I had turned pain into motivation. But Michael, he remained stuck in his own mistakes. I heard about him through mutual acquaintances. After failing to make his court-ordered payments, Michael had tried to sue me, claiming the division of assets was unfair. Of course, the lawsuit was dismissed almost immediately. Cynthia, my lawyer, called me one morning to share the news. He even tried to argue that his emotional support throughout the marriage counted as a financial contribution to your boutique. I laughed. Cynthia, I bet the judge was entertained. He nearly laughed out loud in the courtroom. Michael still didn't get it. He hadn't lost everything because I was cruel. He had lost everything because he never truly had anything to begin with. One late afternoon, as I was tidying up my desk at my main office, my fingers accidentally brushed over an old stack of files. Among the documents, I saw the last message Michael had sent me, before I blocked him forever. Enjoy your little shop, at least it'll keep you busy in your old age. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then I laughed. It was the perfect reminder of my success. I printed it out, framed it in an elegant glass case, and placed it on the bookshelf in my office. Below it, I hung a newly taken photo from the grand opening of my boutique's 5th location. A picture of me standing among my employees, all of us beaming under the stage lights. The best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's proving that I never needed them to succeed. 3 years after my divorce, I received an invitation to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. They wanted me to give a talk on smart financial management in business. I had once been just a woman running a small shop. Now, I was a successful businesswoman. A symbol of independence. As I stepped onto the stage, I saw hundreds of women waiting to hear me speak. I began my speech with a simple sentence. 3 years ago, someone told me that my shop was just a meaningless little hobby. I paused, letting the words settle in the room. Today, that shop has grown into a chain of 5 locations, with dozens of employees, hundreds of loyal customers, and a revenue that person could never have dreamed of. Applause erupted. The lesson I want to share with you today isn't just about business. It's about preparation. About protecting yourself. About never letting anyone else control your future. And most importantly, never letting someone else define your worth. The hall exploded in applause. I stepped off the stage, my heart full of pride. I had lost a marriage. But I had reclaimed myself. And that was worth more than anything. Mia's story is a powerful reminder that true success comes not from seeking revenge, but from reclaiming one's independence. In life, setbacks, whether in relationships or business, are inevitable, but how we respond defines our future. Mia didn't let betrayal break her. Instead, she used it as fuel to build something greater. Her journey teaches us the importance of financial awareness, self-reliance, and never allowing others to dictate our worth. Whether in personal life or entrepreneurship, preparation and resilience are key. Success is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you are capable of thriving on your own terms. What do you think about Mia's journey? Do you believe success is the best revenge? Or should justice go beyond personal growth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, resilience, and taking control of your own destiny.